I wasn't gonna be able to fight for my case by myself, so I just needed a lawyer to convince the judge that I needed to stay here. If they were gonna send me back to Honduras, they were gonna kill me if I didn't join the gang. They killed like one of my family members.
Tiago made the journey as an unaccompanied 14-year-old from Honduras to the US border in 2014. He asked Newsy to hide his identity for safety concerns and because he doesn't want to compromise his ongoing immigration case.
Nobody was gonna help me there. The police didn't do anything, so I just wanted to leave. I wanted to look for like new opportunities here.
After being apprehended by Border Patrol agents, Tiago spent 9 days in detention centers for children. He was then released to family members in Chicago, with his future unclear. A judge would soon decide whether or not he could stay in the US.
I was trying to get a lawyer that was gonna be like very cheap for me because my family is a low-income family.
Low-income defendants in immigration courts, including children, don't get a free lawyer like most poor defendants in criminal and juvenile courts. That's because deportation is considered a civil sanction rather than a criminal one. As a result, the vast majority of immigrants, many of whom don't speak English, have to argue in court on their own and against a trained government attorney.
People don't understand most of the times is that their stakes at immigration court are really high. Sometimes the freedom of immigrants are at stakes and even their lives. So they should have due process to be able to defend those rights. And without an attorney, that sometimes it's difficult.
Only 37% of immigrants in deportation cases between 2007 and 2012 had a lawyer on their side. That number was 14% for detained immigrants.
It is unfortunate that the immigration system requires children to step up and pretend that they comprehend and understand their proceedings when they really don't.
But when immigrants secured legal representation, they fared much better, especially when they were minors. From 2005 to 2014, 73% of unaccompanied minors with representation were allowed to remain in the US, whereas only 15% of unrepresented children were allowed to stay. And overall, only a third of these unaccompanied minors had an attorney on their side.
They are worth the fight, and every child deserves a voice in immigration court.
While pro bono attorneys like Maria Bloomfeld have strived for years to represent as many immigrants as possible, they are now getting a financial boost from major cities across the nation.
A new fund aimed at helping undocumented immigrants who are facing deportation.
The plan to help people pay their legal bills if they're facing deportation.
And a legal defense fund for undocumented immigrants.
In the wake of Donald Trump's election, these cities, as well as California and the state of New York, have increased their funding to local immigration legal clinics. But not everyone is a fan of using taxpayers' dollars to pay for undocumented immigrants' legal defenses.
We have a serious mental health issue in the city. We have a serious crime problem, and I wish we'd be concentrating on those type of things as opposed to illegals in our city.
That's Nicolas Posaro, the only Chicago alderman who voted against his city's defense legal fund for immigrants. The federal government does allocate funds for unaccompanied children's legal services through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. But for immigration rights groups, that's not enough. They want all immigrants facing deportation to be guaranteed counsel if they can afford a private attorney. They argue this would not only be fair, but it would also be financially sound. Giving immigrants early access to counsel, they say, would speed up the system and thus reduce detention costs. But the cases they brought so far against both the Trump and Obama administrations have been rejected. A federal judge said of the most recent challenge that our laws don't categorically entitle minor immigrants to public lawyers, and besides, he said, creating a public defender system would strain an already overextended immigration system. But since the case was about a child who came to the US with his mother, it's unclear if the ruling extends to unaccompanied minors.
We just need to find the right cases to bring that case to the court and continue to make that argument, and hopefully someday all unaccompanied immigrant children, all immigrant children, and just all immigrants in general have the right to appointed counsel.
As for Tiago, he eventually found a pro bono attorney willing to take his case for free. And after years of legal battles, he recently got a green card. He now wants to make sure other vulnerable immigrants can benefit from his own experience with the law.
In the future, I want to help more immigrants who come here. I want to offer them support and let them know that they have rights here, even though they don't have like documents or any green card.